are you starting with this slide?
Would you like me to kick it off with the welcome here? So good evening,
Sure.
everyone, and welcome to our District Grants refresher session. This basically is a reminder of everything that we talked about back in our October session, and except that this is compressed into just a little over an hour. We've got 90 minutes scheduled here, but we'd like to leave some time for questions at the end of it. So Jamie and I will be walking through some of the key points from the slide decks from the earlier presentation, and interspersed with that, we've got a few live demos for you. I'll actually show at certain points how to go into the District Grants website and do some of the things that we're talking about here. So if you'd like to launch, Jamie, by all means.
Okay. So hi everyone. Thanks. As Craig said, thanks for joining us here. This is to our first Rotary Grants refresher. We thought since the grants, the big grants thing was way back in October, we might want to make it a little more fresh in your mind as we approach grant season. Like Craig said, basically we want to kind of not focus so much on what the actual grants are, but more about timelines, the funds available, the types of grants that are available, and actually going live onto the website so that everybody can see where and how to get the grants done. And we'll also go over the grant qualifications once again, and specifically the MOU to make sure that we all understand what we're signing up for. And then there'll hopefully be time for questions and answers afterwards. So starting with the grants timelines, the grants timelines sometimes get be a little bit confusing because they kind of overlaps to 2 Rotary years, and that's to say that when you're applying for the grants now in April, we're applying in Rotary year 21-2022. However, the grants and the funding is all for the next Rotary year, which is Rotary year 22-23. So on April 1st, the Global Grant Ddf applications open, and they're looked at on a first come, first served basis. And they stay open throughout the entire Rotary year until we run out of money. And that generally happens in the first two or 3 months of the year. We'll be out of money. So if you're doing global grants, you want to get them in soon. The next big date is May 1st, which is the deadline for district project grants to be applied for. So the difference is that the district grants have a hard deadline because all of the grants that are applied for are looked at one time and reviewed by the grants team, and they're reviewed, and then what ends up happening is we have to make a what's called a district block grant. So all of the grants that are reviewed and kind of recommended by the district grants team get made into one big application that goes to TRF, and TRF then has to approve that district block grant. And so we then have to apply, and we wait until we hear back from TRF, which normally happens mid to late August. And it's not until we get the district block grant approval back from TRF that any district project related grant is officially approved. So up until that point, no commitment of funds can be made on a district project grant. You have to wait until we get that approval from TRF. So when when that comes, then we let the clubs know that they've been approved and you're off and running and eligible to start your projects. The actual payment of the funds should go out roughly. It normally goes out a couple of weeks after we get the approval from TRF, because TRF has to send the money to the district and then the district has to get it out to the clubs. But it's this date when the clubs are informed of the approval happens hopefully late August, early September. So that's kind of how the grant timeline works, and it's because we do that because we want to start the application process before the new Rotary year starts. Because if we waited until July 1st to do approvals, that whole process would just get pushed back 3 months, and none of the clubs we wouldn't see any money or approvals until November or December, and then we've kind of wasted half of our year. So that's why we get sometimes the confusing that we're applying in 2020, 21, 22, but you're applying for grants in 22, 23. I think that's all I got for the timeline. Greg?
Okay, so I'll jump in here and I'll start by making the observation that when Rotarians in the district make contributions to the Rotary Foundation, 50% of those monies raised ends up coming back to the district. There's a certain formula for this, but in effect, it's 50 cents on the dollar raised eventually comes back into the district. And when it comes back into the district, there's really two large buckets that I tend to think of for these projects. So the first is district project grants, which are either local or international in scope, but basically completely controlled by clubs in the district in terms of what the money goes towards and what the projects look like. The other bucket is basically contributions that the district can make to global grants that you and other clubs are putting together. Just as a side note here, when we talk about the district project grants, they're always referred to in Canadian dollars, whereas the district contributions to global grants are always quoted out or netted out in US dollars. Typically, the two buckets are roughly the same size, so the difference in the dollar value that you see here is really just the exchange rate between Canadian and US dollars. But the formula, the 50-50 split between the district project grants and the district contributions to global grants, is set by the board of the district, but subject to rules imposed by RI. So that's really the breakdown. Within the district projects, I'll talk a bit about those. We've got a couple of different kinds. The first kind is a district scholarship. And typically the maximum award for the district scholarship is $2,000. And when taken with the $1,000 club contribution, you get a total scholarship of $3,000. I've just made a few points here around the district scholarships, such as clubs can treat their district scholarships as basically a pool from which you can actually award more than one scholarship. And the dollar amounts and the number of scholarships coming out of the grant is really up to the club. Pooling is allowed, although we don't see much of it in this particular style of application. And a key point here when we talk about scholarships, and this is something that clubs sometimes get hung up on, is that the scholarships should be paid to post-secondary secondary institutions and not typically to students, because we tend to lose a paper trail in that case. And we often run into problems when the scholarships are paid directly out to students. So it's preferred, where at all possible, that scholarships are paid on behalf of the students to post-secondary institutions. The next kind of district project grant that we have is what's referred to as a youth program grant. These grants are very much the same in terms of their size, so a maximum award of $2,000, which match a $1,000 contribution from a club, leading to a $3,000 grant. there are fairly strict rules around what these monies can be used for. And we're trying to list this out here. It'll be things like the registration and staging for various Rotary programs, such as Ryla, Ripon, and RIAC. They can be used in the youth exchange, friendship exchanges. They can be used to help start up Rotaract and Interact clubs. They cannot be used for much beyond this. So we've seen cases where clubs in the district have applied these grants for things like citizenship programs, which have been disallowed. So this list is fairly tight in terms of what you can use the youth grant funding for. And we always encourage people in this particular case to pay very close attention to the Rotary terms and conditions, so that we don't run afoul of the youth program grant being earmarked towards something that is not eligible. The next one we have are vocational training teams. We don't see a lot of these, but basically vocational training teams are designed to facilitate the travel of a team of people with specified or specific expertise to both teach and learn about particular fields in another country. The travel can be both directions, to a foreign country or have people come to Canada. The grants can be used to support multiple teams. There is a specific district vocational training team type project, and this can sometimes be confused with a VTT uplift on a global grant, which we'll show you a little bit later. So they really come in two flavors. The district grant for vocational training teams, which is more flexible, as well as a contribution or an uplift on a global grant. So that's all I'm really going to mention about those, because we don't see them that often. What we tend to see more than anything else on the district project side is community development grants. And these are formerly known as district projects, but we now refer to them as community development project grants. And these can be anywhere between $750 and $7,500. Again, remembering as district grants, these are paid in Canadian dollars. The club cash matching for this kind of grant is a 3-to-1. So for a $2,500 club contribution, you can be looking at a project with a budget of $10,000. Clubs have a lot of latitude in how they spend these monies. They can be used both for local projects or for international projects. One of the things that we are encouraging these days is that clubs get together and actually pool their grants. So we have a lead club, and we can actually have multiple clubs supporting the same community development project. As funds permit, we allow clubs to apply for 2 of these kinds of projects. And we always insist that these 2 must be prioritized, either P1 or P2. You'll see that on the application form. And the idea here is that we can look at the P2s once we've satisfied all of the P1 requests, and we still have funds left over. So we try to do good coverage on the P1s and then pick up and support as many of the priority 2 projects as we can. And I think at this point, that's it for the slides in terms of the district projects. I'm going to take over the screen share here. And I'm just going to walk through. Whoa.
I'm just going to say, while you're doing that, Craig, there's a question. How do you determine when the district grant report is due? District grant reports are due 2 years after the date of TRF's approval. So hopefully if we got approved, say August 15th of 2022, the reports would be due by August 15th, 2024.
Great. Well, thank you, Jamie. Hopefully everybody.
I don't see our reports monitor giving me a frowny face, so I must have got it right.
Okay, so I'm going to assume we got that covered. So this is the District Grants Committee's website. The URL for it which I repeat almost like a mantra, is rotary5360.org. This particular website has a number of resources on it that I think are quite valuable for completing the application forms for the district grants. The first thing I'm going to show you here is what's called the documentation tab. And you'll note that you actually don't even need to log into the grants website. So anybody can go into this documentation tab and have a look at the resources that we've made available to help with the preparation of applications for district grants. One of the things we'll see here is basically the transcript or recording of our grants workshops. So we've got the one from the October grant here. We'll also be posting tonight's grants refresher here as well. Various publications and tips and tricks sheets. Some come from RI, some have been developed in the district. And the various application forms for the district project grants, which include the district community development grant application, the scholarships, youth programs, and a travel grant, which we haven't seen too much of lately due to the COVID pandemic. But I want to just walk through an example here where someone is applying for a community development grant. So the first thing they would do is they would download the application form for the district community grant project. And the form itself is basically got all the sections that you would need to fully specify the application for this particular type of project. I've got an example here of one that has already been filled out. This one just happens to be water filters for Columbia project. And here it shows the amount that's being applied for. So this is the maximum, the $7,500 Canadian, which is the maximum amount of a district community development grant. The amount that the club in question is putting up to achieve a total cost of the project, in this case, around $10,000. We'll need primary and secondary contacts. One thing I see was missing here that should have been added is the priority of this application, whether this was a P1 or a P2. This we would assume was a priority 1 or a P1 project. We always say that if the priority is not specified on multiple projects, then all projects will be discounted. So if you're submitting more than one project, P1 and P2 priority, in all likelihood, this was the only project application that was submitted from this club. So as you go through it, we're basically looking for a brief description of the project. We're looking for the measurable outcomes. We're looking for some statements as to who the beneficiaries should be, and a little bit about the budget for the project. So once you've got the form and you've got the form filled out, what you would then do is upload this form to the district grants website. And the way you would do that is now you have to log in. So you were able to download the form without logging in, but to actually start an application, you need to log in. We go to the projects tab, and we start a new project by applying for a grant or for Global DDF. And here we will just provide the name of the projects. And because I'm basically making one up here, I'm just going to say a test application. In this case, we're telling the District Grants Committee this isn't a real project. This particular project came from the Rotary Club of Stampede Park. And the type of grant in this case is district project, which basically is the old term, but for a community development grant project. In this case, project was in Columbia. And that's the minimal set of information that's required to get this project application off the ground. One of the things you want to do is upload the application form that you just completed. And you can do this by selecting the document. Sometimes you run into an issue if your form is too long. There's a 2 megabyte limit on what you can upload. So just reach out to somebody like myself or the help desk, and we can get that form uploaded for you. You then need to complete the priority again, the amount requested off the application form, the total cost of the project, the application start date, the application date, which in this case would be today's date, the anticipated start date of the project, which cannot be until after we expect the application to be approved. The approval should come either in late August or early September. So this is the following Rotary year. So to play it safe in this case, I'm going to say that we're going to start this project in November 22. The anticipated date of the project, so the projects can run for 2 years. So I'm going to say, for the sake of argument, that this project is a 1-year project. Actually, let's make it 1.5 years, ending in approximately 03 March of 2024. And so forth. That's basically everything in a nutshell that's required to complete the application form. So this will be the project sponsor, or the person who will be championing the project, which is typically the person who completes the application. When the application is completed, there's a link here to send the application to your club president, who will then approve the application. And once the president has approved the application comes to the District Grants Committee, where it is evaluated. I'm not going to click on this link to not send this off to the president of the Stampede Club, but basically this is everything that one would require to get an application out in front of the Grants Committee.
And just to make it clear that until your president has authorized it, it technically has not been submitted. So in the district projects, everything you have to leave enough time for your president to authorize it before May 1st. Because it's not submitted until they authorize it.
Okay. And then following the timeline, after May 1st submission, the District Grants Committee would take this application, review it. If it looks favorable, this would be rolled up into the district block grant application that the committee submits to Rotary International. And we typically hear back on the success or failure of our district block grant application at the earliest, the end of August, and often into September. Once we hear back from our RI that our block grant has been approved, we'll then send notification out to the clubs that they can start making commitments on behalf of this project, with the project funds usually released, assuming there are no outstanding reporting requirements, towards the end of September, possibly even into early October of the year. Okay, I'm going to stop this share.
And just a point of clarification, when it comes to the reports being due, so they're actually due 2 years from the rollout of the funds. So when even though if we get the approval in mid-August, if you get the funds in the first week of September, the reporting is due 2 weeks from the first week of September. And then what also happens is sometimes there's a second rollout of projects. For whatever reason, there's more money to be spent. So maybe in January, there's enough money for 2 or 3 other projects to happen. Those second rollout projects would be 2 years from the time that they got their money. So it would be in 2 years from January, not 2 years from the original date. We try to get it all out in the first batch, but things happen, money trickles in. Some projects, money gets returned, so we can from projects that didn't get finished or something, and we might have an opportunity to have a second rollout in January. So yeah, so that is so that kind of is district projects, and now let's talk a little bit about the Global Grant DDF. Just a quick reminder of what is a global grant. So global grants support large international activities with sustainable, measurable outcomes in Rotary's areas of focus. So what makes global grants different from district project grants is a global grant requires having 2 Rotary clubs involved. You need to have a Rotary club in the host country, which is the country where the project is taking place. And you have to have an international club be also participate as a sponsor. So typically any global grant that clubs in our district are doing, we are almost always the international club. They can be anywhere in the world, including Canada. They just don't happen very often in Canada. All the clubs and districts involved in a global grant have to be qualified with TRF, just like our clubs need to qualify in order to receive grants from the district. Our district also needs to qualify to TRF in order to provide those funds. And I said global grants are generally a little larger projects. The minimum amount is $30,000 US to do a global grant. So global grants really are all about trying to leverage your club's funds to get out there and do your good in the world. So in our district, again, always in US dollars. For the upcoming year, 22-23, we should have about 220,000 US. Our district has two types of grants available, lead club grants and supporting club grants, each with their own qualifiers, and the lead clubs require 4,000, and these are US dollars, 4,000 US dollars from the club to receive $15,000 in DDF. There's also some additional matching funds for club cash over that initial 4,000. We'll match dollar for dollar with DDF up to an additional 15,000. And supporting clubs require $2,000 from the club to receive $5,000 of DDF. So there's only one pool of money for all the international stuff. So the lead club and supporting club grants all come from one pool of money. Also from that same pool of money is our global peace centers and global scholarships. As we said, these projects are looked at on a first come, first served basis. And we just run them until we run out of money. And then the DDF, all of the district designated funds for global grants are matched by Rotary Foundation at 80 cents on the dollar. So that's where the leveraging really comes into play.
Sorry, Jamie, can I just stop you for a second? Can you just check that your headset is fully plugged in? We're getting a little bit of buzzing.
Sorry. It is. Here. It's still buzzing. Better, of course. Is it working? Not working. I can't hear anything. So. Oh, this, can you hear me now?
That's good. Yeah.
now I gotta get the PowerPoint back, sorry. Sorry about this. Oops. There, how's that?
That's good. Yes.
Sorry about that, everyone. But so where I left off, I guess, was the thing that is new and fantastic for this year is that this year clubs are going to be allowed not only 3 lead grant applications, but they're also going to be able to apply for 3 supporting club applications. So that we wanted to do that in order to try and help promote collaboration between the clubs. And so that clubs that have some funds available can get their money out and take advantage of our leveraging and help support other clubs getting projects done. So so it's very exciting this year. We'll be able to do 3 supporting applications as well as 3 lead club applications. So quickly, what does that look like for the minimum club contributions? Your $4,000 gets your $15,000 of DDF, which is matched 80%, so adds another $12,000, which gives you a $31,000 budget to work with. So you've reached the, you've surpassed the minimum threshold for a global grant project without having to go out and find funds from any place other than your own club. So if you're fortunate enough that your club has enough money to max out your contributions, your budget changes quite dramatically in that you'd have $19,000 in cash, which gets you a total of $30,000 of DDF. Plus, in this example, we've added the you get $5,000 for any VTT that's included in a global grant. So all of that DDF is matched, and you end up with an $82,000 budget to work with. So for supporting club grants, basically your $2,000 cash contribution from your club turns into an $11,000 impact on the funding of your global grant. By the time you put your cash in, your DDF, it's matched. It affects the bottom line of the funds available by a total of $11,000, which I should point out too that a supporting club DDF, you don't have to support a global grant that's in our district. You can support a global grant done anywhere in the world. So a lot of people travel or have friends around the world that are in Rotary and they're working and doing their projects. If they have a global grant that you and your club want to get behind, you can absolutely assign your supporting club DDF to their global grant to help them out. So if you have the combination of a lead club grant and supporting club grants, makes a pretty significant impact as well. So if there's a lead club doing the minimum and they manage to get 2 other clubs on board with supporting grants, they now have $53,000 to work with. So that is the more supporting, like I said, the more supporting clubs you can get, each one is worth $11,000 to your bottom line. So it really promotes working together and getting behind major projects and makes them have some serious impact. And a serious impact would be this would be everything maxed out with 2 supporting clubs. You know, you go from basically $23,000 in cash between 3 clubs, and it turns into $104,000 available for a project. So it's, once again, I'm still amazed by Rotary math. It's still the best math out there. So what do you do to apply for global grants? Well, the very first thing you have to do is you have to have a global grant number. Without a global grant number, there is no DDF available. So the very first thing you do is go to myrotary.org, get to the grant center, and start applying for a global grant. So in order to get the global grant number, you don't have to fill out the entire online application form at TRF. You do have to know the name of the project, the focus of the project, if it's humanitarian aid or whatnot, and you need to have the primary contact from the host club and from the international club. And when you put those things in and hit save, it will give you a global grant number, and that's the number you need to use when you're applying to DDF from the district, which is the next step. So you go through the application, which looks very much like the district project applications with a few little changes. Fill that out, upload that, and when your DDF is approved, then you go back and onto the RI website and finish completing your global grant application, which will then be submitted to RI. But and then it's out of the district's hands. Once we approve the DDF, it becomes a TRF project.
All right, so I'll walk through the application for the DDF for the global grant. It will look very similar to the process that showed you earlier for the community development grant. So once you have your global grant number, you would go to the Rotary5360.org website and log in. But before you start completing the form, you should actually download the correct application form. So here in this form section, which is again towards the bottom part of the documentation tab, where you,
right?
Oh, I am not sharing my screen.
Nope, sorry.
Let me do that again. I do that once. Okay. So back to the Rotary5360.org website. You go to the documentation tab, and towards the bottom of this tab, we've got all of the forms. Here is where we had the forms for the district projects. Well, right underneath, we've got the forms for the Global Grant DDF application. We've got a form for the lead club and a form for the supporting club, depending on which role your club will play in this process. I'll download the lead club form in this case. And it'll take just a second to pop up. And so here we are. We've got the DDF for Global Grant Lead Club application form. We've tried to make the structure of the forms very similar so that once you've got familiarity with one form, the rest should look fairly similar to each other. And again, I've got an example of an application form that has been filled out by, in this case, it's my club, the Downtown Club. What I wanted to show here is this particular form has a spot where you actually add your Global Grant ID number. Again, we've got the amount of DDF that we're requesting, whether or not there's a VTT component to it. So let me just go back through this. So the amount the club is going to contribute, the DDF requested, the matching. There's an opportunity here to specify whether or not you're going to add a VTT component to the project, what the total budget of the resulting project would be, and then the rest of the information that we need to actually assess the application. what I think you'll find is that much of the information that you complete on this form, which then goes into the district grants website in order to request the DDF, is really the same information that you'll ultimately be putting into the grants application on the RI website as well, when you complete the full-on global grant application. So once you've got your form filled out, and back to rotary5360.org, this time you do have to log in. I was logged in from before. We're going to apply for a project. In this case, the type of grant is Global Project. And the name of the project, in this case, it was Clip 2, the name of our Rotary Club of Calgary Downtown, which is the Rotary Club of Calgary on this application. And I'm just going to add something nonsensical here so that this doesn't get mixed in with the real one. Say Sierra Leone, do not process this one. And here we need to provide the global grant number again. The award type will be allocated by the grants subcommittee. We upload the application form again. So here's our application. And when the form is fully complete, the project champion, who most likely has filled out the form, will actually forward the completed application to the club president, requesting that the club president authorize the project on behalf of the club, so bind the club to doing the project. Once the club president does in fact approve the application on behalf of the club, the application then goes on to the district grants subcommittee. We will look at the projects, and if successful, we will award DDF in the requested amount. And you can take that amount and add that into your project budget when you work on the grants website, the RI grants website, to complete the filling out of your global grant application. So really, from a DDF perspective, this is all you have to do to qualify for the DDF from this committee. Okay. So this all sounds pretty easy, but before you get to actually applying for district projects or even DDF for district grants, you have to ensure that your club is qualified. And there's a couple of things that you need to do in order to qualify to receive TRF funding, which we do refer to as DDF for both district projects and global grants. First thing is that we require participation in our grants qualification workshop. We require a minimum of one person from every club to attend every year. And this was our seminar back in October, and just about every club in the district was represented in that session. So that is excellent. We also require that each club contribute $50 US per capita to the annual fund, and we do receive a report from TRF that allows us to verify that requirement is satisfied. That your your club board agrees to the requirements that are set out in the District 5360 Memorandum of Understanding, which you can again download from the district grants website. So because you're applying for grants in 1 year, for the following year, and because the projects typically are 2 years in duration, we require that the MOU be executed by the president-elect, so the person who will be the president in the year that the project actually takes place, plus the president nominee, who will be the club president in the following year. And once the MOU is executed, you will upload that MOU to the District Grants website, and I've got a little demo of that a little bit further in the presentation as well, just to show how that process works. It's very important that clubs understand the requirements that they're agreeing to by executing the memorandum of understanding. And these include having a written financial plan that ensures that we have consistent stewardship through the Rotary years. So basically, the purpose of the financial plan is continuity when one club president, one board gives way to the next in the following Rotary year, that your accumulated knowledge and information about the project is actually managed in a location where the future board can have access to it. That's really the fundamental reason that we require the financial plan. So the project records have to be securely stored, and clubs have to be able to demonstrate in an audit, who the keeper of the original records were, how the information is maintained for the 5 years that we require that the information be held for, and how the succession of the board for your club continues to stay on top of the information as it gets transferred from one board to the next. We do have an audit committee that will look at how the clubs and their projects are performing relative to these obligations. And we also can be audited at a higher level. The district itself can be audited by RI. And failure to maintain adequate records, really on the part of any club, actually creates a risk for the entire district because the club itself can be required to return project funds if the club itself is not in alignment with its MOU. And really, one club can actually put the entire district's eligibility at risk. So it's exceptionally important that everybody have a financial plan and everything is up to date in terms of the MOU. So I'll just walk through a little bit of the qualification for the DDF here. So again, we're back to, and I'll stop sharing and share my screen. Okay, so the documentation here is the tab that we go to. Again, we find everything here. So there should be a template MOU. And up top, I'm blind.
First steps.
There we go. So this is where you would actually upload your MOU.
I'm in the wrong place.
Am I in the wrong place? I'm probably showing you the administrator's view of it, where you can actually see in any year which clubs have actually uploaded their MOUs. I'll just show something else here of interest. So this is where we track that the MOU has been received, that the per capita qualification requirement is met, and that the club is fully qualified. You may find that you cannot actually kick off a project application until we mark your club as fully qualified. So you can see here at this point, we've not activated any of the clubs yet for full qualification for applying for grants. So if you run into an issue where you don't seem to be able to advance your project application, let us know, and we can check your qualification status on the website here. Now, upload your MOU. Yeah, I think I've actually got a different view than most would receive, so I won't demo this further, but if anybody runs into an issue with getting their MOU uploaded, just let me know or Jamie know, and we can do that upload for you. One of the things we do find is that the MOUs sometimes run into that 2 megabyte upload limit. So if that happens, we can get the MOU into the system for you as well. All right. Next slide here. So this was touched on earlier, but I did just want to mention some of the key dates again. These were the dates that were that Jamie mentioned in pretty much the second slide of this presentation. So April 1st is the first day, the opening day for applying for district designated funds as uplifts on a global grant. Anytime after May the 1st, you can submit an application. You would, of course, need your MOU uploaded and your club to be fully qualified in order to actually access this. So if you're planning to do a DDF application on April 1st, you need to make sure that your MOU and your qualification status is all in place before you do that. May the 1st is the last date. So April the 1st is a first day. May the 1st is a last day deadline to apply for district grant applications. And in order to be eligible, you also have to have your MOU uploaded by that date, and the deadline for making that per capita $50 donation to the TRF. So that's all due by May the 1st, the day that the district grant applications close. We will prepare the district block grant application once we've had a chance to review all of the district grant project applications that we've received. And we typically will have that package assembled. It takes a while to review all the applications by about the beginning of June. Which then is our date for submitting the district block grant to RI. We can anticipate that we'll hear back from TRF on the status of our district block grant by about late August. And as soon as we hear back from TRF that our district block grant has been approved, we begin to notify the clubs that they can actually start making commitments on behalf of their projects. And typically we will see the district block grant actually physically arrive in the district by late September. So once we receive our block grant funding, we then distribute those funds to the clubs and their projects. I always encourage people to review very closely the Rotary terms and conditions, and those are available on rotary.org. And as well, we've got on our district grants website the District 5360 terms and conditions. So please familiarize yourself with both of those documents because they do contain all of the rules. But just touching on some of the high points of the use of funds. So all projects that we fund require the active participation of Rotarians. The big one is that monies cannot be committed before the grants are formally approved. So if you make a commitment to expend money before we've received, for example, word that the district block grant has been approved, or before we've actually signaled to the clubs that it's a go to deliver on your projects, any monies expended under those circumstances are ineligible expenses and will not be covered by the district grant. You also cannot make unrestricted cash donations to any cooperating organizations. You cannot fund the operating, administrative, or any indirect expenses of other organizations. And like I said, there are numerous other restrictions. It's always best to familiarize yourself with all of them before applying for any district or global grants. Got some final thoughts here, and then there are a few questions in the chat, which we'll get to. But what I would like to stress is that paying attention to the deadlines is important. In particular, the MOU has to be executed, and all the district project grant applications have to be received by May the 1st. Clubs can only use monies as specified in their applications. Clubs cannot substitute projects/initiatives without the proper authorization. Clubs have to satisfy all of the reporting requirements. No new payments can be made in a current year while reports from past grants are outstanding. And as always, if the rules are not followed, grant funds must be returned to RI, and the district would actually collect from the clubs those outstanding funds on RI's behalf. So that's the whirlwind tour of the grants process. A couple of questions have appeared in the chat, so I'll read them off and let Jamie answer them. So first question, can you modify an application after it has been uploaded?
So you can modify an application. It's not an easy task and requires probably work from Craig on the backside of the website. But until you can freely change things until you hit send to president. And once they've authorized it, then it's kind of locked, and it's, I never want to say it's impossible, but it requires a big effort from the web team to go in and change things. And certainly the biggest issue is once you've hit send to president, we don't want you to change it, because as soon as it's been authorized, the rest of the district project team will start reviewing it, and the whole reason we have a deadline is so that things aren't going to be changing on us while we're trying to review and get the district block grant set. And when the district block grant has been approved, TRF does not want you to change anything. Whatever was written in your application is what you're expected to do. Now, having said that, you can ask them for permission, but it's a bit of a process. They really don't want it to happen, and I will tell you, it is definitely a case of you. If you do have to change for whatever reason, like for example, through the last year, some things changed and got shifted to COVID projects away from what their original intent was. But as long as before you commit and spend any money or do anything about it, we get in contact with TRF and ask for permission and let them know what you plan to do, and they give you permission, then everything is great. If you do it without their permission, you're going to end up paying back all the money. This is not a case of where it's rather ask for forgiveness than permission. You need to ask for permission because there is no forgiveness.
All right. Second comment, this one is from Gail. I think we touched on it, but I'll just reiterate it as well. That if there is anything outstanding from a past grant, you are not qualified or cannot receive your current year's funding. So as I will try to explain, if the project has a 2-year time horizon on it, that means that it's really projects from 2019 that are coming due now, unless they completed earlier, but call it 2019. If there are any outstanding reporting items, if any of the reporting items have not been accepted, if there are any outstanding monies that are due to be returned to the district on a 2019 grant, then we cannot pay out a 2021 grant. 2022 grant.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, a 2022 grant.
So
And
Marlene's asking, do we have a template for the club RE a written financial plan?
I do. I'm putting one together. It's just going around. It's being circulated for review right now. As soon as we get it back, and certainly in plenty of time for the upcoming grants year, there will be a template financial plan on the website that you'll be able to download off that documentation tab. But at this point, we're just circulating it for internal review, and it should be ready fairly soon. Any other questions?
Say, Greg, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I just wondered, it's Graham Root here, but I just don't show up on the screen. So I just wondered whether there's a limit to the number of people you show or what.
You mean in the Zoom
The
meeting?
right hand, yeah, on the right hand side, yeah, my name doesn't show up, so I just wondered.
Yeah, you're showing up. It looks like as Bev.
Oh, well, let's go. Anyway, it's a good presentation anyway.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah. If people would like to unmute at this point to ask any questions, we can certainly do that.
So Michael Bopp here from Cochrane.
Yes.
I just want to know whether the financial plan is an absolute requirement from this year on, that we have to present one, or is it just that you have to have one in case you're asked?
You have to have one, and that's part of the issue that the audit committee brought up, is that it's always been part of the MOU that every club has to have a financial plan, and that it has maybe fallen by the wayside. So we need to put a renewed emphasis on making sure that the clubs have a plan.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the operative word here is renewed emphasis. So we did draw attention to it in the grants qualification workshop in October, and again here. So we'll be looking more closely that the financial plan is present going forward. And I just wanted to mention as well, it's not necessarily a financial plan per project. It's actually a financial plan per club. So if the club is running 2 or more projects, and we're not suggesting that each project needs its own financial plan. And Martin has his hands up.
Yeah, so just recently, RI has come out with some direction for the Ukraine and for global grants. Can you go through that, please, so that everyone understands what we can and cannot apply for?
I have not read it, so I don't know.
Yeah. I think that just came out this afternoon.
Yeah, it's been out for a couple of days. So
Okay.
I think you're going to get some questions. All
Yeah.
right.
We'll need to follow those up, I'm afraid. Yeah. I just got wind of it just in advance of this session. So, so any questions will follow up.
Craig, it's Bob Weens here. I have a question about the supporting grants. I know that my club can support 3 other global grants with DDF, but if I'm the lead club, is there a limit on the number of supporting clubs I can organize to support me?
The more the merrier.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
I was going to say, I think not.
I had one quick question, Craig, and that is, I'm trying to understand what's eligible and what isn't. Like, for example, I was suggesting a school bus is needed for a school that I'm involved with, or definitely school, anything as far as teacher salaries and support for the teachers. And the other thing is operating costs. None of those things are, anyway, I want to understand what's eligible and what isn't more.
As a global grant or a district project, or either, I guess.
Yeah, oh, yeah, where all the boundaries are, because anyway, every time I've put forward something, it doesn't seem to be sustainable, or it doesn't seem to fit the criteria.
Yeah.
And those are 3 examples.
Yeah. Well, I would probably look first at operating expenses. I don't think those are eligible at all. And Jamie, you can correct me. Salaries, that would really be in the same bucket as the operating costs, I think. So those would not be eligible. The school bus.
The bus should be.
Yeah. Yeah, what I would probably do is just really look at what's planned against the specifics of the terms and conditions. But at first blush, it sounds like you'd probably be able to do the bus, but not the other 2 operating expenses.
Greg, some years ago, I tried to do a bus in Columbia, and the issue comes down to, if it's in a global grant, who's committing to the maintenance and the operating expenses.
Or did you catch that, Jamie? There was something zooming across my screen here while he was speaking.
Yeah, it was just one of the challenges with a bus in a global grant would be RI's going to want to know who's going to pay for the maintenance, how are they getting money for gas, who's going to drive the bus, who's going to pay the driver. They don't want to spend money on a bus, drop into a place, and not understand how it's going to continually be used. You have to be able to show how it's going to get used. Which is really no different than if you bought an X-ray machine for a hospital. They're going to want to know who's going to maintain the X-ray equipment, or who's going to be trained on it, and all those things. They need to know that it's not just going to be dropped in and sit on the side of the road and do nothing because they can't drive it.
Okay. We've got some comments from Kurt. I think this probably came up and is in reference to the question that Trevor was asking just a while back in regards to what would an eligible expense look like. Kurt has shared with us that it's in the Rotary Grant terms and conditions, and also in the area of focus policy documents. So those are probably the places to go to make the determination as to what is eligible and what is not. Also got a question here from Hank, which I think is worth mentioning. I'll just read his comment. You may want to emphasize that if unavoidable circumstances do not permit you to continue with your project as described in your approved application, you cannot repurpose the grant funds without first obtaining approval from the grants committee. I actually think it's more than that. It's actually without obtaining approval from the Rotary Foundation.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Hank.
So,
others?
There's a little about
Sorry,
here. Again, we have 2 current global grants where salaries or fees, we're paying basically for people to do work on the ground, to animate communities and to do training. And that's been approved, and they're very happy about it.
If it's project specific, it's okay. It's like general, like you couldn't be paying the salary of the executive director of your implementing organization, but it's okay to pay part of the salary for the project manager of that specific project.
Right.
And only their time that they spend on that project.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so it's really important, I think, to appreciate the difference between a project and an ongoing operational expense. And then if it is project, you're going to have to speak to what the ongoing sustainability looks like as well. Any other questions? Looks like we may have got them all then. So thank you, everybody. Jamie?
Nope, thanks everybody for coming.
I
Unless
thought you had a
there's
comment.
Nope, I'm all good. I
Okay.
just wasn't sure if I could see the Michael and Judy Bopp talking there. I was wondering if another question was coming, but
Yeah.
they're gone now, so.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight. I hope this was useful and provided some clarifications and some inspiration as we head into the upcoming grants application cycle. As always, if there are any questions, by all means, drop us a line. There's a district grants help desk email address listed on the front page of the District 5360 grants website. And of course, you can reach out to either Jamie or myself at any time. So thank you all and have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jamie and Craig.
Thanks, Jamie.
Great idea to have it just before grant season.
Yep, super refresher. Thank you.
Fingers crossed, we all get to do it a little easier this year.
Thanks.
Very much, was very good.
Bye.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,